What's up, everybody, and welcome to Lacrosse Now. That is Travis Eldridge. I am Tom Eschen. We've got a full show for you here today. We're very excited about it. Of course, the NLL Final, the last game this weekend, Game 3. Whoever wins it all between the Bandits and the Mammoth. We'll finish up with our predictions for that one.
Yep.
We'll also have some talk about the different coaching hires that are going on now in the college men's game, some things changing around, and also we'll have one of those new coaches, Brad Ross for Bryant. He'll also join the program.
But we're going to start in the PLL. We're going to be joined by Cannons goalie Nick Marrocco here in a bit. But for now, we're going to preview Week 3 that's on Long Island here for the PLL. Look back at Week 2 in Charlotte. And we have some PLL pressing questions here, Tom. So why don't we start with this? Because I think one of the early storylines of the league season has been the Redwood struggles and maybe kind of head-scratching. And so the PLL pressing question here, what on earth is wrong with the Redwoods?
You know, I was thinking about this, and you watch the NBA Finals, and you watch some of the Celtics obviously are there for a good reason, and it's almost like the Redwoods to me have those similar characteristics. They're just not getting anything done because the Redwoods for a long time built on defense, right? And for some reason the defense isn't working out this year. The same thing with the Celtics. The defense is what has gotten them to the championship and now that allowed them to play so successfully. And the Celtics, obviously a lot of isolation ball, a lot of individual efforts that is when they're good, they're great. And they've been good enough for the playoffs, second half of the season, they've been great. Redwoods, a lot of the same thing, but no one's getting the job done. You watch them play, it's just a lot of individual dodges down the alley, and then someone slides, so they pass it off. And there is time after time, you're looking at another shot clock violation, not even getting something off. It's a lot of individual-based effort, and right now the individuals aren't getting it done. And I think it all starts with Rob Pennell there, because, you know, Pennell, obviously an acquisition a couple years back from the Atlas, and he comes into the PLL, and I just think maybe at this point in his career, we're expecting too much out of Rob Pennell, and the Redwoods are in turn as well to sort of guide that offense the way they thought he would of Rob Pennell of 2015, 16, whatever you want to say, a Lizards Rob Pennell. He's no longer that player, and he had obviously his peak and the prime of his career came back then. He's not in that anymore. They need to redefine some of those roles for them to be successful, and I think it starts there.
I think that's the most surprising thing about this, because obviously you mentioned Rob Pennell. I mean, but like, look at this offense. You've got Pennell at the attack spot. You've got Kavanaugh, Garnsey, Jules Heningberg they've had run out of the midfield. You got Miles Jones in that midfield. Sergio Perkovic is in that midfield. I mean, you got guys that even against some of the best players in the world, there's no reason that they can't get their shot. They scored 3 goals this past week. 3. I mean, Miles Jones, the Redwoods account is tweeting when he scores, too big, too physical. Well, he was only too big and too physical for one play this past week. I mean, what do we, like, at some point, these guys have to take some responsibility of like, all right, yeah, we've got great social media followings, we're building our brand, but like, what are we doing on the field? Because that, that's an embarrassing offensive performance.
Well, like you said, they have great individuals offensively. They're just not playing together really well.
Yeah,
no one seems like they want to cut into the middle, and when that happens, it's sort of a last-ditch effort at the end of the shot clock, and they kind of get out of the way, and if they don't have it, they pass it off and try again. That's just, there's no flow or anything there right now in that offense.
But here's the difference. We're not talking about playoff basketball, which the Celtics are trying to play here. We're talking about regular season lacrosse. So, like, you're to tell, like, at some point, the defenses are playing hard, obviously, but, like, at some point, these guys, more than 3 times in a game, should be able to beat their matchup and score.
Yeah.
Like, that was, well, you know, it's one thing to lose and to score 8 or 9 goals. To score 3, I mean, that's one of the worst offensive performances we've seen in the history of professional lacrosse.
It was. I mean, the lowest amount of goals ever scored in a PLL game. You also, it's not just contained to the offense either. T.D. Erlin has not been great either. He's winning less than 50% of the faceoffs. I think a lot of people expect more out of him than that when it comes to that. And also Tim Troutner, a guy that's been really consistent, and he's gotten better and better throughout his career. His save percentage right now is 31. And over the course of his professional career, he's gone up each and every year. 53% when he started, when he was Rookie of the Year, to last year he was at 58. So I think that obviously the offense is not getting the job done, but when you're looking for sparks to try and help other facets of the game, they're not getting those either, which I think everything has been cataclysmic in that nature. It's like an avalanche, and no one can stop the bleeding. There's no spark anywhere on this team, and I don't know where you find it.
Yeah, because it's so, like, it's mind-boggling considering, like, you look on paper, Pennell, Garnsey, Kavanaugh, like, there aren't many other attack units in the country, in the league, that you would go, yeah, I'm taking them over these guys.
I mean, at this point, I don't know. Because
well, from what we've seen, yeah. I mean, I would take a bunch of
Kavanaugh's had a nice career.
But before the season.
Kavanaugh's had a nice career. I don't know if he is what he was. You know, you have to look at this league that way it is today. We'll get into that and sort of the passing of the torch here in a little bit, but what is lacrosse now? We can't keep ourselves 5 years ago. And even Ryder Garnsey, we talked about it to preview the PLL season. I said, I need to see something from him. He has something to prove after not really being all that great after his debut, in which he was pretty good.
Yeah.
So you do look at that, and you're like, oh, those names are great. But what they've done on the field, I don't think translates to what you see elsewhere in this league. You know, you look up and down those rosters, and the attackmen and the midfields that have been so dynamic, that just doesn't strike dynamic to me right now.
They're not hungry.
And I mean, you look at Miles Jones, Sergio Perkovic, that does stick out. And Jones, probably you could say, has been the best offensive player for the Redwoods, despite his low turnout this year. So, I mean, yeah, on paper, I think their midfield obviously should stick out. But at this point, I don't know. There's something that has to change. And a team that's built defensively, you would imagine, would have to start there and go offensively, but you can't just not do anything on offense and expect your defense.
You got to score some.
I mean, if your defense isn't going to hold them to single digits, then you really don't have a chance, because that's also a problem.
Right. Yeah. They just, by the way, signed Sergio Salcido out of the player pool, so they're trying to do something. But I mean, that doesn't fix your problem. At the end of the day, like, their problem is the guys that they have on the roster on paper should be good enough to win in this league. They have not. They've proven that to be incorrect through 2 weeks.
No, yeah, and you wonder what. I mean, this is not a long season, so
no,
I mean, there's
kind of a sprint.
The percentage of the season is already over, and they have struggled at that. And they didn't get any of those really great draft picks that came out this year. You know, they were comprised of other guys that played for other. I mean, Arden Cohen, I think, was their main guy that has played defensively pretty well for them. But
they gave like. We talk about their defense, but they gave up 17 goals to, I mean, really good Atlas team, but they gave up 17 goals in week 1.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, neither end has been great. The defense was better in week 2, but it's not playing the Atlas. But
we will say, from what we have learned about this league, is that there are times where teams can look terrible through 2 games, and then next week, all of a sudden, they look like a different team for one reason or another, but depending on who's available, who's healthy. There are things that can change really quickly, and I think maybe that was the wake-up call, too. You know, we have all these problems, but if you don't have a wake-up call after, you don't want to change things, maybe week 1, you're like, okay, we'll just play better next time. But after week 2, and once you score 3 goals, you're like, oh, we need to change something. And I think Nat is a good enough coach to be able to do so.
Yeah, I mean, Nat St. Laurent is the type of guy that can light a fire under a team.
Oh, so yeah. I do think that after...
I think there's a fire that's being lit after 3 goals.
I don't know if after the first week they go and say back to the drawing board. I think after week 2 they say we'll figure things out. And it's tough to really do that quickly in pro lacrosse, as you know, too.
Well, you mean you
don't have so much time with these guys.
You need the guys that are talented to be talented on the field.
Yeah.
They need to be better.
Yeah, they are. They need to play together better at the end of the day. That's
where
it comes. To me, that's what it comes down to.
Right. Well, we talked
same thing with the Celtics at the end of the day, but that's a whole different story.
Tom does not like the Celtics for Game 6 here on Thursday, just so you know. All right, let's move on to our second PLL pressing question here, which is it a changing of the guard weekend? Because we have a big matchup on Friday night between the Atlas and the Whip Snakes. The Whips, of course, have been one of the best teams, the best team through 3 years of this league, because they won 2 titles, got back to the championship for a 3rd time. Versus the Atlas, who through 2 weeks this season, and when you look at them on paper, look to be incredibly impressive. Is this the changing of the guard where the team that is looked at as the front runner is handed from the Whip Snakes to the Atlas?
Not yet.
Okay. So you like the Whips in this game?
I was looking at things, and we've talked about the. I mean, I think it's just the problem of the fact that the Atlas have dominated their first 2 weeks, and the Whip Snakes as they usually have, a couple one-goal wins in their first couple weeks. But that doesn't mean the Whip Snakes are any lesser than they have been. And just because our last memory of them last year is losing in the playoff doesn't mean that they still have an incredible group, that has been successful in this stage. And the regular season here in the PLL doesn't mean as much of the postseason either, and you see what the Chaos did last year. They made that great run. And you see what the Whip Snakes did last year after finishing undefeated in the regular season and then ended up losing in the playoffs. So I don't know if it's time yet to anoint them. They still have. I mean, their attack unit has been great. Jay Carlson, 6 goals and an assist this year. Of course, they got Rambo. And Justin Gutterding, would like to see him do a little bit more. I mean, in his first season, he had 19 goals, 14 assists in the PLL. 19 goals and 11 assists in his last 3 years. So for him to be healthy and out there, I think for the Whip Snakes, really important. And he is right now. And I don't think that, with what they have, we just talked about how much the Redwoods struggling, especially goal faceoffs. I mean, Whip Snakes have Nardello. He's winning more faceoffs than anybody else in the league. And I know Trevor Baptiste, to people, because of his scoring, seems like one of the best. But they also have Bernlohr and Cage. So I don't know if it's time just yet to anoint the Atlas, whether they win or lose this game, as the torch being passed to them.
So either or, you don't think it's time yet?
If they win by like 10, then maybe I'll change my mind. But
by the way, speaking real quick again about the Redwoods, if there's anything that should wake them up, they got flexed out of the ABC game on Saturday because they've been so bad, and were archers and cannons.
They're playing the Chaos too. We're also still short-manned.
Yeah, but they scored 3 goals last week. They don't want that. PLL doesn't want that on ABC. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Anyway,
and the Chaos got rid of Bryce Wasserman. So,
taking a job with the Tennessee Titans.
I know. How about that? Good for Bryce.
Big things happening for Bryce.
Congratulations, Bryce.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Atlas and Whip Snakes. This Atlas team, we talk about on paper what the Redwoods look like. On the field and on paper, I think they're the most talented team in the league because you go up and down, and I really like the balance because you got a guy in Jeff Teat who clearly in his rookie season proved that he can play with the best players in the world here in the PLL. You add in Chris Gray, who now is showing you that, I think it's no surprise, like you saw it in college, that he was going to be able to compete at this level, but really showing you that he can. And you have a veteran presence in that attack spot in Eric Law, who I just love to balance out some of the youth there because he's a tremendous leader. He's a great locker room presence. He's a really good finisher. And as you pointed out here this past week, is now also distributing the ball. He's got 4 goals and 4 assists through 2 weeks. There are seasons he barely had 4 assists in Major League Lacrosse.
Yeah.
And he's been a great guy who can kind of fill in the holes of what those other 2 superstars are doing. Then you keep going back down the field. Cade Van Raphorst has been really good. Baptiste, you mentioned the faceoff acts. He was just named the player of the week, and the PLL is voted on by the fans. And then defensively, you got some youth around a veteran presence in Tucker Durkin, who can be an imposing figure. Oh, and by the way, Jack Kincannon has been the best goalie in save percentage throughout 2 weeks of the year. So up and down the field, I look at them, there are no holes. I think from what we've seen and on paper, they're my most talented team in the league right now.
How far are we away from calling Jeff Teat the best player in the world?
That's a really good question.
Because a lot of times that is all-encompassing, and we've had these conversations. When it comes to Lyle Thompson, even Tom Schreiber, when it comes to being a box and a field player. Jeff Teat, a guy going to win the Rookie of the Year in the NLL. He already won the Rookie of the Year in the PLL. He probably, within the next couple of years, depending on how his team, the Riptide, does, probably an MVP in the NLL could be coming his way. How far are we away from that?
Not that far, because you look at his rookie season in the PLL, not only was he the Rookie of the Year, but he was in contention for MVP.
Exactly.
And he leads the rookies in scoring in the NLL, and that was even with missing a couple of games. He missed a game due to COVID. He missed another game, I think, at some point as well. So he played a couple fewer games than everybody else, and he still leads the rookies in scoring, is up there amongst some of the league leaders as a rookie. You're right. He's going to be an MVP for the foreseeable future. He is an MVP candidate in the NLL and an MVP candidate in the PLL every year, and he's done it on the world stage.
Yeah. So
already,
you were talking about this. I'm wondering that conversation. I don't know if we're the first one. I don't know if it's been had, but it's time to have that conversation. It's time to begin. And of course, World Championships and the field game coming up here next year, an opportunity for him to really implement some notoriety and see how that all goes. But I think that I mean, like you said, he's an MVP candidate in both leagues. To me, that strikes me as pretty up there. You know, when you talk about the Lyle Thompsons of the world, who I think a lot of people have called the best player in the world at this point, alongside maybe a Tom Schreiber at the same time. It's tough to not say that Jeff Teat's a part of that conversation.
You know what's so crazy about that conversation is that it was only like a couple years ago where the discussion around Jeff Teat at Cornell was, oh, well, you can lock him off and he'll be kind of passive, and like Cornell at times offensively. And when they struggled with him, I think it was 2019, when they struggled in games where he was there, it was when like he was just kind of passive, let somebody just lock him off with a short stick or whatever. He stayed out of the play and they played 5-on-5. And the question was like, well, if he's that great, why isn't he going to try to get the ball? Why doesn't he demand it more? Well, now a couple years later, we're seeing him showcase not only like the ability to demand the ball and demand that kind of respect, but also the ability to beat his own guy, like quote unquote off the dribble type deal. Like he can beat his man. And there were times at college like that was doubted if he was athletic enough to beat his guy one-on-one and make everything happen by himself without some other piece around him. We're seeing that was that negligent question. Like he's that good.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that it's going to be really interesting as we continue to move on here, and we all putting this in the changing of the guard conversation, you know, in terms of how it all looks in the scope of grand scheme of things in pro lacrosse and the outdoor game of that is. If you have the best player in the world, then you probably will be the best team in the league on a somewhat yearly basis.
Yeah. I think this is a big game. I think this Atlas wins this. I think it says a lot about what they're going to be moving forward.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I can't wait to see it. So you got Water Dogs Chrome, that's also Friday. Archers Cannons Saturday, also very interesting.
I love that
for
game.
Those two teams.
Yeah.
Can the Archers do what they did last week? We've been calling for offense. They had the offense. We found it. Now you got to go do it against the Cannons and a goalie, Nick Marrocco, that's playing really well.
Yeah, which brings us to our last PLL pressing question, which is can this new crop of goalies sustain their success? So you look at the top three goalies in save percentage in the league right now through 2 weeks. Jack Kincannon, the Atlas, has been in the league since the very beginning, but was brand new to pro lacrosse when the PLL started. Sean Scanoni, who played a year in year and a half in the MLL before making the move over, coming out of UMass. And then Nick Marrocco is third from the Cannons, who had a little bit more MLL experience before he came over to the PLL. But it's a fresh group compared to like some of the veteran presences that we've known in past years that's leading the way. Are they the guys that are leading into the future, or is some of the other guys going to come up from behind? You
know, I think that you look at these guys specifically, and you would say Marrocco probably is the best chance of that. He's been the most consistent throughout his career. I mean, he's at 57% saves now, 13 goals or points against average, whatever you want to call it. Last year, he was 56% save percentage, 13 save points against average, whatever you want to call it. To me, he probably has been the most consistent. Scanoni last year, he didn't get much time at that as either. So he has been good in the pro level before. I want to be able to see him do it. I'm not sure what it will look like for him as a consistent goalie here in the PLL in this state of things. And Kincannon, the other guy, I don't know. He is very streaky to me. Throughout his career, he's had some up years. He's had some down years. Even within a season, he's had streaks of games where he's got 18, 19 saves back to back to back, and then he might fall off a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's been consistent enough even within a season to be able to say that I have a lot of confidence in that. So I'd go with, if I'm going to pick one, I'd say Marrocco would probably be the one that could sustain the success.
And I'll follow up with this. You look at those three guys leading the way. I also look at further back. Like, who are some of the guys that have been there in the top couple of goalies in the league over the last couple of years that maybe just the numbers aren't quite there yet? And I look at both Blaze Reardon, who is only at 49% save percentage through 2 games, and Kyle Bernler, who's actually just missed out of the top 3. First of all, Blaze is only going to get better as the chaos get better with all of the influx of NLL players that should be joining the team here in the next couple of weeks. So I think that number is low and will get better automatically because I think the Chaos are going to get better as a team in front of him. And then 2, I mean, Bernler is going to finish this season. I will be surprised if he doesn't finish in the top 3. So I look at the 2 of them as guys that maybe along with Marrocco end up being the top 3 goalies in the league by the end of the year. But I love Sean Scanoni.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, we know the CAA better than most because of the amount of attention we pay to it. Two of these three guys, and the top two guys, Kincannon from Hofstra, Scanoni from UMass, both guys from the CAA who show, like, Scanoni was a first-team All-American his senior year. Like, this shouldn't be a surprise, and I think it is to some people, but it shouldn't be a surprise because, like, he showed it. He was the best goalie in the country his senior year at UMass, and he's now showing it professionally.
And that's, we've talked about in the PLL last couple of years and in pro lacrosse how tough it is to go and get a goalie job and keep it, you know, with the competitiveness and how many good goalies and great goalies there are. Obviously, he couldn't play, you know, John Galloway ahead of him, and what are you going to do? And there were other goalies in the league that also, you know, there aren't any spots. So the goalies that have gotten opportunities, I think they've done a pretty good job of stepping in and playing pretty well, you know, for the most part.
Sure.
There hasn't been many cases where there's been a goalie that has stepped in and not played well in lieu of some of these older veterans that have moved on.
Yeah, no, I mean, Scanoni showed it when he was with the Rattlers in Dallas. And
Connecticut Hammerheads as well.
Yeah.
At the end of his career.
You look at this,
MLL.
You look at this like Rattlers and now to Chrome trajectory. I mean, like Rattlers at one point toward the end of the MLL had Blaze Reardon and John Galloway, who, I mean, they were talking about they might be the two best goalies in the world. Now have kind of played out once they both had their own jobs. And then Scanoni was the next guy to follow up. Like those three goalies, you could argue at any given time have been three of the best goalies in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really interesting how that things have changed over time and where their teams are at the moment as well.
Yeah. Good goalies.
Yeah, good goalies. And we spoke to another goalie, Nick Marrocco, today. So Nick Marrocco does join us now. Nick, you getting ready? All excited for the weekend? Heading down to the island. You pumped for that?
I am. It's always a good time to play there. Fans are great. So it'll be a good weekend. I'm just ready to rebound after this past weekend. I think we're all excited. And playing against the Archers is always a battle, especially last year. So it'll be good. We're all psyched up. I think, we were able to fix some things from last week too. So it coming off of that, I think there was a good little check for us to figure out our weakness and just play better each week.
Well, hitting on that, so you guys are 1-1 here so far this season, and every year in professional lacrosse, despite there being similar teams, it feels different because you get some new pieces in, some guys leave. What is this team? What's different between this team and last year's team? How does it feel different?
Yeah, I think part of it is just last year with it being, a new team with, even though a lot of us had played together, I think just being a new team, it's always interesting. Just everyone's trying to find their groove, figure out playing styles, how we all mesh together. And I think honestly, towards the end of the year, I mean, we had a lot of 1-goal losses, which was pretty brutal. But I think towards the end of the year was when we were really playing our best. And at the end of the day, we just couldn't put it all together for I'd say a full game where we were able to continue to the championship. That's the ultimate goal. But I think this year having that tight knit group still back together is huge, and just having I think that rhythm, offensively and defensively, to be able to put the pieces together. And then we added some new guys in the mix as well. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's just, everyone's back and there's more rhythm to this team this year. And, just trying to capitalize and improve in the areas that we were struggling a bit. And I think it's been better overall.
I know it's the second year for the Cannons in the PLL. I guess I'm curious, how much of that Boston Cannons identity do you feel like you still have? It's such a unique team in the PLL because everybody else had to sort of just make up their own in terms of how the teams are formulated. Now that like you said, you've got some holdovers from that squad and you have a little more rhythm. How much of that identity do you still feed off of? Kind of what is that like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's big for me, obviously, coming from Boston. So I try to hold on to that as much as I can. But no, I think there's definitely still some of that. There's, a few guys who we've played together for a while now. So there's some of that identity. I think also just Coach Quirk kind of just tries to build that type of culture within a team. And he did that in the MLL and continues to do that in the PLL here. And But at the end of the day, there's always new guys on teams every year. There's, studs coming out of college every single year who are trying to get a spot, and you have guys who retire. So it's just fitting in those pieces, and you just kind of have to adapt to new people on the team each year. But no, I think it helped. From day one coming into the PLL of having a core group there, and now we've kind of grown that core group from last year, and been able to establish a good culture within the team. I think we're all pretty tight, which definitely helps overall in just how we play together. And in those tight games, unfortunately last year those tight games didn't go our way, but I think mentally we were all really dialed into it, and that goes a long way, whether it ends up being a winning season or not. Last year it wasn't, but I think that mentality is what is going to help bring success down the road. And the goal is for that to happen this year.
So you obviously played at Georgetown. Another guy who plays on the defense in front of you, Brody Merrill, also played there. Different generations, though. He's been doing it for a long time. What's it like to still see him do it at this level at his age?
It's crazy. It's awesome. I mean, he's still got it. He's such obviously a talented player, but he's such a smart guy in the sport. And I think that's the biggest thing. And having that within our team is incredibly helpful. Just having that knowledge, and then him just understanding how the game works and the ins and outs of how to play at the pro level, but also just like that guidance, for the young guys coming in, especially of, okay, Brody, what would you do in this situation? Maybe he sees things a little differently than some of us who haven't been in the league as long. I think there's a big benefit to that. And, when I first started playing my first year in Boston, he was on the team. And then, for a couple of years, we were on different teams, and now being back together again, it's pretty cool, especially just coming from Georgetown, and you're playing with Brody Merrill. It's a pretty cool feeling, and he's an awesome guy, really good team guy. At the end of the day, he just wants to win and do whatever he can in order to win. So I think having that, and for us just seeing that with how long he's played the game is pretty. It fires everybody up, and we know he's going to give it his all. So we're not going to give anything but that on our end as well.
You've faced Lyle Thompson in games. Now you get to face him in practice all the time. How much fun is that?
Yeah. So much fun. Oh no, it's tough. Honestly, it makes me better though. He has such a unique style, and I mean, he's the best to do it, and it's just playing that during practice. It's tough. There's some shots like, all right, I was in perfect position, thought I had it, and you just dunked it over me. But no, I think he brings an edge to the way he plays. I mean, he's not afraid to put his body in whatever play it may be. He puts it out there. He's so crafty. I think he makes everybody around him better. And, it's pretty cool on the defensive end to watch that, in games. During practice, not so much, but I think he not having him last game definitely hurt us, clearly, and just, the pace of the offense, and, even just transitioning the ball. But I think, he's the type of guy you can rely on towards the end of a game or end of a quarter where, okay, we need to get a good shot off or a good possession here. He gets a lot of eyes towards him, as in everybody's focused on Lyle when they have the ball, so he can create offense, but he can also really bring a presence where he gets opportunities for other guys. So I think he's a dual threat on the field, and it's awesome to have him on our team now and not play against him.
Yeah, right. It's a lot better when he's on your side. And
exactly.
Yeah, that's he's the kind of guy you want to play with instead of against.
Yeah.
have been one of the top goalies in the league so far this year in terms of save percentage. If you compare this year and where you feel your game's at to your first several years professionally, like where are you? You getting better still?
Yeah, no, honestly, I think I'm still getting better. I feel really good about where I'm at. There's always things you can improve upon. And I think every year I've kind of learned a bit more about what I can do as a goalie. And then at the same time, it's also just getting back to, the basics of what got me to where I was in college fundamentally and all that. Before this season started, I went back to my old goalie coach, Tillman Johnson, and, did a goalie lesson with him. So even though I'm playing pro lacrosse, people kids especially, don't realize like I'm still working on stuff in my game so that I can stay tuned into all the fundamentals of it. So no, I'm excited about just, continuing to try to play my best. I think I feel really good, especially this year in the cage and just, more of a veteran in the league, having played a few years now. So I'm just looking forward to being able to try to be at my best consistently so we can let the rest of the guys do it and score some goals.
I love hearing that because it's a great lesson for like kids out there of like, hey, you can get to the highest level that you can play at and you still got to keep working to try to get better.
Yep. If it's, at the end of the day, if you stop working, somebody's going to catch up to you. So you have to find something within your game, whatever it may be, to really step the game up. And if not, that's complacency, and complacency at the end of the day is going to end in losses if you don't improve upon it. But no, it's fun. It always keeps me going. So I love it, and I'm looking forward to keeping it going.
Well, of course, not only did you used to play for the Boston Cannons, you're also a Massachusetts native growing up there in Duxbury. You're still here in the city. What's happening here? We're taping this on Thursday afternoon for full disclosure. What's happening in Game 6? Celts and Golden State.
Celts. I'm going. Celts are still winning. Last game was disappointing, but I'm a believer. All my Boston sports especially, but maybe I'm a little biased, but I think the Celts are the better team. I think they're going to come out with a win. So fingers crossed, but looking forward to watching.
We'll see. We'll see about all of that. I appreciate your passion. I'm not against anything.
Yeah.
Everyone non-Boston sports. Boston, come on. What's the deal?
I'm from New York. Come on,
yeah.
man.
There it is.
Yep.
I knew it.
Nick, thanks for the time, man. We appreciate it. Safe travels to Long Island. We'll talk to you soon, man. All right?
I appreciate it, guys. Good talking to you.
Moving now to the college game, and a bunch of new coaches have taken spots in Division I as some of them are announced officially, others are still reports. Let's start with the official ones, and you got Bob Benson moving from Maryland as the offensive coordinator to take over the Providence College job, a big job in the Big East. And Bob Benson, a guy who had been rumored as one of the guys up for a bunch of different jobs, and settles in Providence, which to me is a really intriguing job that, like, with the facilities there and the support of the athletic department and the school, it just feels like that could be a program that could take that next step at some point. Yeah, and he saw that this was the opportunity to do so. That's always intrigued me when these coaches decide to make that leap, because like we said, he's been in that carousel, he's been in the talks, he's done the interviews, but never, whether it was him or the other side, were ready for the right spot at the right time. That's why I find that so intriguing when it is. And there was something about this Providence program, and obviously that comes with the backing from their administration and also what they have in place already there. The opportunity at hand with Providence for him is big. I like they went 6-8 last year, and they've got a kid, Ryan Bell, a freshman,
9 goals, 34 assists last season. And for a freshman, I love the fact that he can kind of start there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got a young player that's a feeder, that is your quarterback on offense, that is going to dictate everything you do, and he's got a year of experience under his belt. I really like that for a guy that did such an amazing job with Maryland. I mean, yes, they had great talent, whatever, but you go from an offense based around one guy, for the most part, and Jared Bernhardt, and then you get all these transfers, all these new players, and you're able to make it not maybe even better than it was the year before, right?
It was definitely better.
And go win a championship, to me, I mean, that's magistry, and I can't wait to see what this Providence offense can do.
Yeah, and it's just so crazy to think about like where his career was a couple of years ago, because he was out of coaching when Dave Petromalo left from Hopkins.
Yeah.
He had been the offensive coordinator there, went down to Georgia, was supporting his wife and her career, and then all of a sudden J.L. Reppert gets the Holy Cross job early on. Maryland's got an offensive coordinator job open, and John Tillman convinces Bobby Benson to come and basically like commute and to College Park and be part of this program. And now he's got this Providence job. And I mean, I think like in the Big East, like you look at the outlook of the Big East, and Georgetown obviously has been super talented. Denver is there still. But after that, like Villanova, Providence, we're about to talk about St. John's here in a second, Marquette. Like, there's a bunch of programs that all feel like if they get the right recruiting class at the right time, could all of a sudden be the class of this conference. And so it feels open to me.
Yeah, I think that's probably what he saw in the fact that he had this opportunity in this conference as well. I mean, Big East, that's a great conference to go and get to for a head coaching job. Like I said, the support of the administration, I think, for a lot of these guys is important. And we've seen that in Providence with what they've built there and how they've been able to shape things. And I think that he's got some good pieces to work with and obviously great experiences to go from as well. Dave Petromalo, and then you go and win a championship. I mean, that's as good as it gets. Especially for Providence, you had to be very happy that he took the phone call.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The stadium there at Providence is fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect lacrosse size. By the way, speaking of great stadiums, you see what Marquette's building?
No.
They've got an awesome, beautiful new facility that's going in down there in downtown Milwaukee. It's a partnership with the city and the school that they're going to kind of both inhabit that the stadium, soccer teams and lacrosse programs.
Okay.
And it is beautiful. So
Big East is coming on up.
Big East is making some moves. All right. Speaking of the Big East,
still
just a report. It hasn't been officially tweeted out yet or reported by the school, but Justin Turry heading from Michigan to St. John's to take over the Johnnies head coaching role.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting coming from the Big Ten in Michigan, and we saw what that offense did. You know, at the beginning of the year, they were the best in the country with Zawada guiding things there, and, you know, you kind of get to be a part of a program that was trying to build something. And I think that you kind of have to do that with St. John's. Really interesting. He comes in and replaces, you know, Jason Miller, who had been there for 16 years. So probably a fresh start, not only for a guy in Turry, but for a program that probably needed one at this point. You know, that's why things move on, and you got those ebbs and flows as the program goes on. So, like you said, this job for him, a guy that has experience. He coached with Army, he coached in Providence and Harvard as well. So, has a few different things he can touch on over the course of his life and his career. And I think that going from Michigan to St. John's is, you go from the Big Ten to the Big East. Maybe he can channel some of that offense and do it in a conference in the Big East too.
Yeah, I mean, his biggest thing is going to be convincing guys that they want, like if it's New York guys, convince them to just stay there and want to go to college in Queens and play for that team. But like you talk about where it is, and he has the ability to build it up like, all right, we're going to bring in, if we've got the talent, we can bring in some and convince some non-conference teams to come play here because the recruiting ground and how close you are to Long Island and how that all works. That's what we've seen from Hofstra and teams like Hofstra and Stony Brook over the years. Like, well, you build that team up.
Not only that, but also you think of how many kids and people that we talk to who end up, oh, you know, I'm going to work in New York City after I'm done. You know what I mean? Like, that's another piece that he can use.
Go to college in New York.
And I do find it interesting because I think that the culture at Michigan is something he could bring to St. John's as well. Because you go on that Michigan campus, no matter the sport, obviously football is king there, but there is a feel. You know,
pride.
There's a pride that is attached to that and a very professional way of thinking there on that campus in Ann Arbor. I think that experience for him is going to be really good to bring to a program like St. John's too, which obviously isn't as big in stature in the sports world, but he can kind of channel some of that and bring that into that St. John's program too.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's got a freshman attackman, Brian Kelly, 24 goals, 20 assists this year. So he's got some youth, and also another freshman in the goalie, Caden Quirk. So
the son of Cannon's coach, Sean Quirk.
So you've got a good foundation there for him too to work with.
Absolutely. All right, final one that we have so far, Bryant. Of course, Mike Pressler, the legendary coach there, Bryant, who helped take that program from Division II to Division I. Hiring Brad Ross, who was a former associate head coach under Pressler a number of years ago. He comes back to take over the head coaching job. Really excited to see what he does there. When in coaching circles, you talk to people about what he has been, and I remember hearing about him at Ohio State. And then when Joe Amplo took that Navy job, he was one of the guys that Amplo wanted to bring to the Naval Academy, and that was a big hire for Joe Amplo, so good to see Brad Ross get an opportunity.
Yeah, and he's had a lot of different valuable experiences. We'll talk to him in a moment here. Just hearing from the names that he's worked with and under over the course of his career, I think really important. And like you were able to pick and choose what you like and don't like from some of the greatest. I mean, any coach would want that, and he's had that. So I think that's really important, number one, and also had some of those experiences at Duke, the real life experiences at the same time that I think those stay with you and you learn a lot. And obviously for unfortunate reasons, but being with Duke back then, and you kind of feel like, okay, like this is what is more important. You learn some priorities there too that I think he's held with him throughout his coaching career, not in addition to his playing career too.
I mean, he played for John Danowski at Duke. He went and coached with Lars Tiffany at Brown, then coached with Mike Pressler. He's coached with Nick Myers at Ohio State and Joe Amplo. That's a pretty exclusive community of coaches. I mean, you look at the Team USA coaches, whether it's the men's national team, U20, like
right, that's it.
That's like a good mixture of them. And then Lars Tiffany, who's won 2 of the last 3 national championships. So that's a good mix of guys to have in your corner.
And we talk about what is there for these coaches to work with, and he probably has the most of the couple that we've talked to in terms of Bobby Benson and Turi. Logan McGovern, he's coming back, 19 goals, 35 assists last year. Good sophomore. Bennett Abladian, 42 goals, 5 assists, has a pretty good face-off guy, and Jacob Alexander, all as upperclassmen now returning. So he, to me, has the most to work with as they move to the America East, which obviously will be very interesting to see Bryant in that conference now.
Well, let's hear what he has to say about his new gig. We had a chance to catch up with him earlier today. So we're now joined by the new head coach at Bryant, Brad Ross. Brad, first off, congratulations on the new role. I know it's a bit of a whirlwind, but has it sunk in? You've got your own program now. What's that like?
Whirlwind is one way to describe it. Yeah, you could certainly say that. It's been a wild 72, 48 hours. I think as soon as you get here, you want to make sure that you connect with all the current guys as quickly as you can. And that's honestly really where our focus is right now, is the current team. Certainly we'll set our sights on recruiting and some of those other pieces as we move through the summer. But right now, the most important thing are the current guys.
Yeah, you mentioned your wife having grown up in Rhode Island. Did you meet her the first time you were there as an assistant?
We did. So we met right when I was moving from Brown to Bryant. And we met when I was playing for the Cannons through a mutual friend, and been together ever since.
Yeah, so good memories going back to Bryant. This works out well. You're taking over for obviously a legend who you obviously have worked with in the past in Mike Pressler. I wonder, what were the conversations like with him, whether it was before you got the job, once you've gotten it? Like, what do you say to Coach Pressler?
I will say this is that, and I said it to the team, what's been really cool for me has been in recruiting. You always tell kids, like, it's not a 4-year commitment, it's a 40-year commitment. And a lot of times that's coach speak, but like the oddity of, almost 20 some odd years to the day from my first conversation with Coach Pressler. He recruited me when I was in high school, and we've kept that relationship for 20 years. And I think it's a unique time, obviously, for the university, for the program, but you're never going to replace Coach B. There's no way to do that. You mentioned, earlier we were talking before, about Coach K retiring and John Shire, filling in. He'll never fill those shoes. He's going to have to obviously continue the traditions that Coach K had, but he's going to end up, certainly putting his own spin on it.
You mentioned all of that. What does a Brad Ross program look like then? What is your iteration of Bryant lacrosse and Brad Ross lacrosse too?
Well, I think right now the program has always been built on toughness, discipline, loyalty. Those things absolutely are going to remain. There's no doubt. That's how the foundation was built, and that's how it will continue to move forward. I think the thing that I really want to focus on is the relationships part of it. That is why I said I started with the conversations with the current guys, because I have to accelerate that process as fast as I can, because I want to get to a point when we start practice here, in 2 months, that we already have strong relationships with our players so we can continue to improve.
You mentioned relationships, and that, to me, a couple of the guys, whether it was playing for Coach John Danowski or coaching under Nick Myers, like both of them, I don't think I've ever heard coaches mention relationships more than talking to those coaches. What do you take away, whether it's Coach Myers, Pressler, playing for Coach Danowski, working with Coach Joe Amplo? What do you take away from each one of those stops and things that you've picked up from head coaches you've worked with in the past? A bunch of good ones, too, by the way.
Absolutely. And I think, and that's a big piece, of it for me, is that I'm so fortunate of who I've been able to be around. Honestly, I consider myself just about as lucky a person as there is, so when I finished college and started with Lars at Brown, what an incredible transition for me, Duke and Brown, two very different schools. And to learn from Lars, who's won 2 national championships, as a 23-year-old kid who didn't know which end was north, I'm sure I thought I knew everything. I've apologized many times to him over the last 12 years. I said, I'm sure I was a pain in the butt. I've realized how little I knew back then, and certainly how little I know now. But then be able to come back here to Bryant and work with Coach Pressler for 4 years, and especially after everything that happened in 2006, to be able to link back up with him and kind of reform that bond and give back to him how much he gave to us was hugely important for me. And obviously, with him, coaching with him versus playing for him are two totally different pieces. I laugh, and I've told people before, I've told this to Coach P, like, when you're young, you don't really understand sometimes like what they're telling you. Why are they yelling at me? Why are they being so hard on me? And then as you get older, you realize exactly why. And they're building you. They're trying to get you ready for the world. They're trying to make you tougher. And so to go back to really work with Coach P and see that from the other side was really special. And then the transition to Ohio State, Nick runs, probably the most comprehensive lacrosse program in the country. And he is as diligent a person as I've ever met, and no stone is left unturned. So I think spending time in that program, you just see all the different facets of a program and how it can be run at a really high level. And then lastly, with Joe, I can't thank Joe enough for what he did for me and my family for 3 years. I swear to you guys, I didn't have a bad day in 3 years. I promise you that. It was as much fun as I've honestly ever had. And I think what I took away from Joe specifically is that you can do this thing at a really, really high level, have fun doing it, and have unbelievable relationships.
You mentioned coaching tough. And I feel like you obviously have played for some more older school guys and now have coached with some kind of more newer school type coaches. And the type of kids you're coaching now is different even from like 10, 15 years ago. Just the culture and the way people are brought up, it's just different. How different is it to try to coach toughness now compared to maybe even when you were coming up?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when you think about toughness, I think we look at it and what we hold people accountable for. And to me, there's really kind of 3 different mistakes, if you will. Like there's effort mistakes, there's mental mistakes, and then there's physical mistakes. Like the effort mistakes and the mental mistakes, you got to get after people and you have to hold them to extremely, extremely high standard. But I've really always coached a way where I don't want to yell at people for physical mistakes. Because, we all played the game. We know we were there, like, coach, I'm not trying to drop the ball. I'm not trying to do it. I really wanted to hit that shot. And so getting lit up for something like that, I don't think is conducive to confidence, which is, in my opinion, one of the most important, if not the absolute key piece for an offensive player to play well.
briefly back to, and I think it might tie into something that maybe your philosophy or whatever, back to some of those people that you've worked with, those, like Travis mentioned, some of those coaches, like, yeah, great. Like you said, like you've been very lucky to work with a lot of different, great coaches, a lot of different personalities there as when we were kind of going through them. You think about each of those guys. What's a characteristic, I guess, that you've picked up that's the same about them that you hope to implement into your program?
I think to answer that question is very clear to me. And I've thought about this a lot, honestly, throughout this process. And the one thing that ties all of those people together is just extremely high care factor. Like they care about everything. And it's how you do in school, how you're doing socially, how you're engaging in the community. Like all those things tie together. And they all do them differently, which is unique, but they absolutely have an incredibly high care factor.
Yeah, and it's something that you see in the relationships they have with their players. It stands out with all those different guys that you've worked with. On the field, not only is it a new experience for you as a head coach now, but Bryant's in a new conference as you move into the America East. What kind of excitement level is there around the campus to be moving, not only just for lacrosse, but the whole university into the America East Conference?
I mean, all the conversations I've had so far have expressed that joy and excitement about changing conferences. And I do think it's a great time for our program as they make a transition between head coaches that, we're certainly going to try to build on the successes and past successes in the NEC, but then moving into a new conference, it's going to be really exciting with a program that kind of gets a continued fresh start.
You mentioned your wife being from Rhode Island. We joked about it before. Like there's a community feel. It's a small state, and there are a lot of people that don't like to leave. They are there. Like Boston is a world away for some people in Rhode Island. But as being a head coach now at Bryant, that also is like community feel that feels like it's your home. Like how do you relate to now being back there and kind of your experiences in that state before?
I think that was a huge piece of it for me as well. Like when we first started on kind of the why Bryant piece, and I started with my family, you look at yourself, hopefully, I do as coach. And then on the other side, it's like father, husband. And every decision you make is with both in mind. And certainly like the appeal of the university, the support that they have, how successful I know these guys are when they go out and graduate, like that's what gets you really excited. And then what makes it feel like home for you is the family aspect of it, right? From certainly my wife's side of it. But then one thing that's been really fun for me is coming back here. A lot of the people that were here when I was here before are still here. So you can almost start right up from where you were before and where everything is. That's going to be really fun for me.
Is there something you have to do like that you used to, as a part of your routine, go to like a sandwich shop? I don't really know.
I've already done it twice.
What is it?
I've already done it twice. Got to go up to Pickpockets. It's right up in the gas station. The same guys working there was when I was here. I had my order down pat, and I was back to the office and eating the same thing I was eating 8 years ago.
Oh yeah. Those are standbys.
Yeah,
it's the best.
Sure.
But it's funny, like you were talking about Rhode Island. It's a 4 or 5 minute drive, which for people from Rhode Island, that's like cross country.
It's true.
That is true.
Yeah, make some trips to Federal Hill. You got some good Italian food there now as well.
I lived in Federal Hill for a year.
There you go.
Good spot.
Wow. Brad, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much. I know it's been, like you said, more than a whirlwind the last couple of days, but congratulations. Can't wait to see you guys on the field coming up this fall and, of course, this spring. Congratulations once again, and thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
So let's finish up with some NLL picks. NLL Finals, Game 3, the deciding game, sold-out crowd in Buffalo. The only tickets available, I think, are on the resale market.
Yeah.
Bandit Land is going to be rocking. Who do you got? It's Bandits or Mammoth?
I mean, I have a little bit long. Well, you don't have to do this that quick, right?
Okay, yeah,
you want me to pick right off the bat here. But,
sorry.
I mean,
number one, Tom's going to tease
Number one, no one really thought the Mammoth, this was going to happen, right? I mean, everyone thought, we had Jake Elliott. I'm sorry, Jake, don't mean to throw you under the bus, but he's like, yeah, I think the Bandits are going to get it done. And the Mammoth come out, and, for 3 quarters, dominated the Bandits. Bandits scored 6 goals in the second. I think they had 1 goal in the third and fourth, didn't score in the first. I think I'm doing that right. If not, it's something like that. I mean, this was a performance for the Mammoth in Game 2. Obviously, they were at home. It was crazy there. I mean, they just had the Stanley Cup Final Game 1 in Colorado. We talked about Ball Arena. What an atmosphere right now in Denver. So Colorado has made this fascinating, right? Because it feels like you go into Game 3, you're not as sure, right? I'm not as positive as to what will happen.
Well, I think that you look back at both games, and even you look back at Game 1, and it's a 1-goal win for Buffalo where they get a defenseman to score a transition goal to win it. But, like, the number of times where you felt like, okay, this is the Bandits' game, and Colorado kept coming back. And this is without Ryan Lee.
Yeah.
They're playing without their best offensive player, one of the best offensive players in the league. They've done it for, like, the entire finals. And they're still finding ways to get back in the game. And Eli McLaughlin was out this past week for Game 2, and they still find a way to win.
Has been great. Connor Robinson has been great.
And Dylan Ward, 40 saves. You hold this Buffalo offense to single digits?
Yeah.
That's almost unheard of. Now, the problem for Colorado is, I think if they're going to win, they have to do it again, and this time on the road. And I don't know if you can do it. It's one thing to do it once. It's another thing to do it back-to-back games and do it in Buffalo.
Yeah, and you're right. And so this is why I'm leaning towards the Bandits here, because you look at what happened in Game 2. DeHoga and Connor Fields didn't score a goal. Dane Smith had 2 goals and an assist. That's not Dane Smith.
No.
Josh Byrne had 2 goals, 2 assists.
Yeah.
Not bad, but I don't know if that's going to happen again. It just feels like they're too good to have 2 straight games in which all those players are quiet for Buffalo. But I think the loudest person is going to be Matt Vince. I think Matt Vince will have maybe one of the jewels of his career here in this game. He hasn't had 50-plus saves, I think, since March, late February. It was a game against Halifax. I think he's going to do something like that here, and he's going to take home the MVP, and Bandits will win it. Because I think that with the way Dylan Ward's playing, Matt Vince is going to have to perform better than Ward. So I think Ward probably gets another 40 saves. I think Vince makes more than that, and I think he plays well enough to keep the Mammoth off the board for long enough. Bandits offense gets it done. A little bit more scoring than we saw in Game 2 for sure. I think it's going to be more like Game 1, like a 13-12 kind of game.
So you've got Bandits.
Yeah.
I also have the Bandits.
Mammoths ain't picking against us.
Yeah,
That's what they're saying.
It's the thing, like, you do it once to them, and that is really impressive, but we haven't seen Buffalo's offense held in check for 2 consecutive games all year. There's been a reason they have been the best team in the league all season long. They were the best team in the regular season. I will be shocked if Colorado goes to Buffalo and silences that crowd and wins. I've been surprised before. It's why you play the game, but I really think if Buffalo gets it to double digits, they get to 12-13, Colorado, at some point, the shortcomings they have offensively, missing some of these stars, is going to get them. And unless Dylan Ward stops 50 shots, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah, I think he has the capability of doing that.
He does.
He's a big game guy.
I will say. So I think.
Who's your MVP?
I've got Dane Smith.
Okay.
I think offensively, Dane had 7 points in Game 1. You mentioned the 3 points in Game 2. That's not him.
They have one assist in Game 2. That's stuck out big time.
No, that's not Dane Smith numbers. I think he's the one that carries them. I could see 7-8 points from Dane Smith. And he ends up with 18 points in the finals and ends up with the MVP.
Yeah.
If Colorado wins, Dylan Ward is the MVP.
Yeah.
Because if they win, it will be because of Dylan Ward. That's my argument.
I think Zed Williams would have an argument with that as well.
I would agree.
He's played really well.
But I feel like it's got to be like a single-digit game. And if you hold this Buffalo offense
they'd
to
have
single
to do that
digits again.
Right, like you said, they have to duplicate Game 2 again.
Pretty much,
Ward would have to either make another 40-plus saves to be able to do so.
Yeah.
So that's what, 8 o'clock Saturday night?
Man. ESPNU, TSN, north of the north of the border.
Wherever you might be. 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 Central.
That game's. The atmosphere for Game 1, the atmosphere for both games so far.
Yeah.
And now you go back to Buffalo, electric.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. What a product the NLL has put together.
It's what lacrosse should be all about.
We're just glad. We're glad to have an NL season this year. We've been treated to now a winner-take-all championship. Pretty cool.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So make sure you watch that, and make sure you watch the PLL this weekend. Should be a lot of fun. We will be back on Tuesday next week. We're changing the day for Lacrosse Now. So we'll be back on Tuesday to check in with you, recap the PLL week, and we'll start to get you ready for the World Championships on the women's side.
Yes, they are coming up fast at the end of June, so tune in then, tune in now. Thanks for watching this time around, too.